My father tried to marry me off to a man who killed 2 wives, so I exposed all his secrets. 2 years later, he's back claiming I'm mentally ill and begging me to come home. My father showed up at my apartment at 6 in the morning, crying. I hadn't seen him in 2 years, not since I stood up at his church and told everyone what he'd tried to do to me. Now he was on my doorstep with red eyes, saying he was sorry, that he missed me, that I needed help. Rachel, please. You're sick and you don't even know it. I've been talking to doctors. They said what you did, the things you said about me, it's a symptom. I opened the door but didn't let him in. I asked what doctors he'd been talking to, and he fumbled with his phone, showing me emails from someone named Dr. Westbrook at a psychiatric facility 2 hours away. The emails talked about paranoid delusions, family estrangement, recommended treatment. My name was all over them. I haven't seen any Dr. Westbrook, I said. Dad nodded quickly, wiping his eyes. That's the point, sweetheart. You need to, before this gets worse. 2 years ago, my father tried to arrange my marriage to Marcus, a man from his church who was 47 years old. I was 23. Marcus had been married twice before. Both wives died in accidents. The first fell downstairs. The second had a car crash on an empty road. When I said no, my father told me I was being ungrateful, that Marcus was a good Christian man who would take care of me, that it was already decided. So I started digging. I found police reports, insurance payouts, restraining orders that had been filed then mysteriously dropped. I found medical records showing both wives had been treated for injuries before they died. And I found my father's bank statements showing Marcus had been paying him monthly for 3 years. $20,000 total. I exposed everything at Sunday service, stood up during announcements, and read it all out loud while my father tried to drag me out of the building. The church did nothing. They said I was troubled, that I'd always been dramatic. But Marcus left town, and my father cut me off completely. Now he was standing in my apartment doorway, and something felt wrong. He kept looking past me into my apartment, like he was searching for something. He asked if I was alone, if I'd told anyone he was coming. I hadn't told anyone because I didn't know he was coming. Why does that matter? Dad shifted his weight, and I noticed he was wearing new clothes, expensive ones, a watch I'd never seen before. He said we needed to talk privately, that he had so much to explain, that I'd understand everything once I just came home for 1 weekend. Just come home, Rachel. Let me take care of you like I should have been doing all along. I asked why now. Why after 2 years of silence was he suddenly concerned about my mental health? He started talking faster, saying he'd been wrong, that he should have protected me from Marcus, that he'd been afraid and made terrible choices. But here's what made my stomach turn. His car was parked in the visitor spot outside my building, a brand new luxury sedan, and in the passenger seat I could see someone waiting, a woman I didn't recognize, watching my apartment window. Dad, who's in your car? His face changed. Just a friend. She drove me here because I was too emotional to drive myself, but that didn't make sense. My father lived 6 hours away. Why would a friend drive him 6 hours at dawn? I stepped back and told him I needed to think about it. He grabbed my wrist, not hard but firm. Rachel, please, you have to come home today. Right now. Not this weekend. Now. I pulled my hand free and asked why the urgency. He looked at the ground, then back at his car, then at me. Because Marcus came back last week. He's been asking about you, where you live, if you're still alone. My blood went cold. Why would you tell him where I live? I didn't, Dad said quickly. But he found out somehow. That's why you need to come home where I can protect you, where we have security systems and neighbors who know us. But I saw something in his eyes then. Something that looked less like fear and more like calculation. I asked to see his phone. He hesitated, then handed it over. I opened his recent calls. There were 17 calls to a number saved as M. The last one was from this morning at 5:47, 13 minutes before Dad knocked on my door. I felt my hands start shaking as I scrolled to his text messages. The conversation with M went back weeks, planning, coordinating, and the most recent message, sent at 5:52 a.m., said, "She's home, door opens inward, no deadbolt," because the rest of the story is on my channel or linked below. I slammed the door in my father's face so hard the walls shake. My hands are trembling as I fumble with a chain lock, sliding it into place just as his fist pounds against the door. "Rachel, open the door." His voice has changed, the fake concern replaced by something harder, more urgent. I back away, clutching his phone in my hand like a lifeline. The text message is still on the screen. "She's home, door opens inward, no deadbolt." "Rachel, you're confused. You need help." Dad's voice softens again, calculated. "Please, sweetheart. Marcus just wants to talk." Marcus, the man who killed 2 wives and paid my father $20,000 to deliver me as the third. I feel bile rising in my throat as I dial 911 with shaking fingers. 911. What's your emergency? Someone's trying to break into my apartment. My voice comes out steadier than I expected. My father is outside my door, and I found texts on his phone. He's helping a man named Marcus find me. Marcus had 2 previous wives who died in suspicious accidents. And, "Ma'am, is someone actively trying to enter your home right now?" I hear my father's footsteps retreating down the hallway. He's leaving, but the texts show someone named Marcus is coming. "Please, I need help." The dispatcher takes my information and promises to send an officer immediately. I run to my bedroom window and peek through the blinds. My father is hurrying toward his car, gesturing frantically to the woman inside. She steps out, smooths her skirt, and walks toward my building's main entrance while my father slides behind the wheel. I text my location to my best friend with, "Emergency. Dad showed up with Marcus. Police coming. If you don't hear from me in an hour, call Detective Ramirez." 20 minutes later, Officer Patel arrives. She's young but has sharp eyes that miss nothing as she examines the text messages on my father's phone. "And you say this Marcus had 2 previous wives who died under suspicious circumstances?" I nod, pulling up the files I've kept on my laptop. The first fell downstairs. The second had a car accident on an empty road. Both had life insurance policies. Both had reported injuries before their deaths. Officer Patel is scrolling through more texts between my father and M when her radio crackles. She steps aside to respond, then turns back to me with a grim expression. "My partner just spotted a vehicle matching the description of Marcus Johnson's car parked behind your building. Dark blue Audi Audi, license plate partially matching what we have on file. My stomach drops. He's here, we're getting back up, but I need you to stay calm. Is there anything else you can tell me about? A knock at the door interrupts her. We both freeze. Rachel? It's Dad. His voice is overly cheerful now. The nice lady at the front desk let me back in. I forgot my phone. Can you open up, sweetheart? Officer Patel motions for me to stay quiet and moves toward the door, hand on her weapon. Sir, this is Officer Patel with the city police. I need you to step back from the door. Silence then. Officer, I'm sorry. There must be some misunderstanding. I'm just here to check on my daughter. She's been having some mental health issues. Sir, please step away from the door and keep your hands visible. While Officer Patel deals with my father, I notice his phone buzzing with an incoming call from M. I answer it, putting it on speaker. Richard, what's taking so long? The back door's unlocked. Should I come up? Marcus's voice is impatient. Cold. Officer Patel immediately radios for her partner to check the building's rear entrance. I end the call before Marcus can hear anything. My partner's checking the back, Officer Patel says. But we should. The sound of breaking glass from my bathroom cuts her off. Officer Patel draws her weapon and pushes me behind her. Stay here, she whispers, moving toward the bathroom. But I know my apartment better than she does. The bathroom window is small but big enough for someone to climb through, and it connects to the fire escape. I grab my keys and my own phone and run for the front door, throwing open the chain lock. My father is standing there with a woman from the car, both looking startled as I burst past them. She's running, my father shouts, reaching for my arm, but I'm already halfway down the hall. I hear Officer Patel yelling behind me, the crackle of her radio, and then another sound, the bathroom door being kicked open. Marcus is inside my apartment. I don't take the elevator. I sprint down the emergency stairs, taking them two at a time, my heart pounding in my ears. When I reach the ground floor, I push through the exit door and run straight into two police officers rushing toward the building. Marcus is in my apartment, I gasp. Officer Patel is up there. They radio for backup while one officer stays with me and the other runs inside. Within minutes, the parking lot is filled with police cars, lights flashing. I watch from the back of a patrol car as they bring Marcus out in handcuffs. He's taller than I remembered, his face harder, eyes scanning the crowd until they lock onto mine. The smile he gives me makes my blood run cold. My father is escorted out next, protesting loudly. This is all a misunderstanding. My daughter is mentally ill. I was just trying to get her help. Ask Dr. Westbrook at Pinewood Psychiatric. The officer taking my statement looks up. Ma'am, do you have a psychiatrist at Pinewood? I shake my head. I've never been to Pinewood. I've never met any Dr. Westbrook. My father made that up. As if on cue, Mrs. Gonzalez from apartment 3B approaches one of the officers. She's lived next door to me for 3 years and brings me homemade empanadas every Christmas. I saw that man, she says, pointing at Marcus, watching Rachel's apartment 3 days ago. He was sitting in his car for hours. I thought about calling someone, but I didn't want to overreact. The police search my father's car and find a small black device in the glove compartment. A tracking device, they tell me, identical to one they discover magnetically attached under my car. We'll need formal statements from you, the detective who's arrived on scene tells me, and we'll need to process your apartment as a crime scene. Is there somewhere you can stay tonight? I think about my friend's offer to crash on her couch, but the detective shakes his head. We need somewhere Marcus and your father don't know about. That night, I sleep in a police-arranged safe house across town. My father is released pending investigation, not enough to hold him yet, they explain, but they've confiscated his phone and placed him under surveillance. As I lie in the unfamiliar bed, I think about the text message that started all this. She's home, door opens inward, no deadbolt. They weren't just planning to find me, they were planning to get inside. The safe house feels like a cage after 3 days. Detective Ramirez finally clears me to return to my apartment with a security escort, but I can tell from his expression that something's wrong. Marcus posted bail this morning, he says, watching my reaction carefully. We've got a patrol car assigned to your block, but I need you to be vigilant. My stomach twists. And my father? Still under surveillance, but legally, we can't stop him from going about his business. He hands me a card. Call this number if you notice anything suspicious. Anything at all. Work is a welcome distraction, though my boss insists I take the desk furthest from the windows. I'm halfway through responding to emails when Eliza from accounting appears at my cubicle, her face pale. Rachel, there's someone asking for you in the lobby. My heart stutters. Who? She wouldn't give her name, just said she used to go to your church. I find a middle-aged woman with nervous eyes waiting by the reception desk. She introduces herself as Judith, a former member who left the congregation 2 years ago. I saw your father at the grocery store yesterday, she whispers, glancing around as if he might materialize beside us. He was with Marcus. They were arguing about payment schedules. My blood runs cold. You know Marcus? She nods. My sister worked for his import business before. She swallows hard. Before she moved away suddenly, she told me things about him that kept me up at night. I take her number, promising to call. Back at my desk, I find a text from Detective Ramirez. New deposits to your father's account. $5,000 last week. Working on source. That night, I move into a new apartment complex with security cameras and a doorman. The management allows me to install additional cameras inside my unit. I watch the installation technician mount them in every corner, feeling both safer and more trapped with each one. My phone rings with an unknown number the next morning. Is this Rachel Coleman? The woman's voice is hesitant, brittle. Yes. Who's this? My name is Vanessa Linden. I was Marcus Johnson's first wife's sister. My hand tightens around the phone. Meredith's sister? Yes. Her voice cracks. The police contacted me about reopening her case. They mentioned your name. We meet at a coffee shop downtown, where Vanessa slides a manila folder across the table. Inside are photographs, letters, and a handwritten timeline. Meredith kept a journal, she explains. After she died, the police wouldn't listen when I told them it wasn't an accident, but she documented everything. The pattern is chilling. First gifts, then isolation. Controlling behavior escalating to accidents. A car that mysteriously lost its brakes. Food poisoning. A fall downstairs that left her hospitalized. All leading up to her fatal accident just 3 weeks after she mentioned divorce to a friend. His second wife Tanya followed the exact same timeline, Vanessa says, her eyes hollow. I tried to warn her, but by then Marcus had convinced everyone I was obsessed and unstable. I'm still processing this when my phone buzzes with a news alert. My father's face fills the screen, standing outside a local news station. My daughter has been struggling with severe mental illness, he tells the reporter, his expression a perfect mask of paternal concern. These delusions about her church family trying to harm her are symptoms of her condition. We just want to get her the help she needs. The reporter nods sympathetically. And these allegations against prominent businessman Marcus Johnson? Completely fabricated, my father says smoothly. Marcus has been a pillar of our community for years. He's devastated by these accusations. I shut off the phone, nausea rising in my throat. He's trying to discredit me, I tell Vanessa. Make people think I'm unstable. That's exactly what he did to me, she says quietly. The next day at work, my coworker Jen calls me over to my old desk. There, tucked between papers, are 3 small notes I hadn't seen before. Stop lying. No one will believe you. Accidents happen. Security footage shows my father being escorted to HR for a delivery 2 days earlier. That evening, my phone rings. It's Pastor Michael from my former church. Rachel, I've called an emergency meeting of the congregation for tomorrow night. I'd like you to attend. Why? I ask, suspicion flaring. Because your father and Marcus have been spreading their side of the story. It's time the congregation heard yours. The church is packed when I arrive. My father sits in the front row, his face thunderous when he sees me. Marcus is nowhere to be seen, but the woman from my father's car sits near the back, watching me with calculating eyes. Pastor Michael gives me the floor, and with shaking hands, I present everything. The text messages, the tracking device, the financial records Detective Ramirez provided showing my father's gambling debts, and the payments from Marcus, Meredith's journal entries, and finally, the autopsy report for Tanya Johnson that Detective Ramirez had obtained. The report notes bruising inconsistent with the car accident that supposedly killed her. I explain, my voice stronger now. Bruising that suggests she was already injured before the crash. My father stands, face red. This is absurd. My daughter needs psychiatric help, not an audience for her delusions. But the congregation has seen the evidence. They've heard the recordings. Murmurs spread through the room as people begin to connect dots they'd previously ignored. When I return to my apartment, a massive bouquet of white lilies waits at the front desk. The card reads, "White lilies are traditional at funerals. Looking forward to yours. M." I'm still staring at the card when my phone rings. It's Detective Ramirez. "We've identified the woman from your father's car," he says without preamble. "Angela Winters. She's Marcus's cousin and has been on his payroll for years." What does that mean? It means we have enough to bring your father back in for questioning. And Rachel? We just caught them on surveillance parked across from your workplace. They were there for 3 hours today, taking notes on the building layout. I sink into a chair, the phone shaking in my hand. What happens now? Now, he says grimly. We set a trap. I sit across from District Attorney Melinda Hayes, watching as she flips through the evidence we've compiled. The fluorescent lights in her office make the photos of Marcus's previous wives look even more haunting. The patterns are undeniable, she says finally, removing her glasses. Identical escalation timelines, similar insurance policies, suspicious injuries before the deaths. She taps Meredith's journal with her pen. This should have been investigated years ago. Will it be enough? My voice sounds small even to me. To reopen both cases? Yes. To convict? That depends on what else we find. She slides the files into a folder. Detective Ramirez has been thorough, but Marcus is careful and connected. I think about Vanessa's words. Marcus had convinced everyone I was obsessed and unstable, just like my father is trying to do to me now. My phone buzzes with a text from Detective Ramirez. Urgent. Call me. I excuse myself to the hallway. What's wrong? We found something in the police database. 3 domestic violence charges against Marcus disappeared from the system, completely wiped. Someone on the inside has been helping him. My stomach drops. Who? Working on it. Stay vigilant. Don't go anywhere alone. I'm still processing this when I spot my father across the street as I leave the DA's office. He's sitting at an outdoor cafe, watching the building. Our eyes meet, and instead of looking away, he stands and walks directly toward me. Rachel. His voice is calm, reasonable, the voice he uses at church when he wants to appear wise. We need to talk. You're violating the restraining order, I say, backing away. I'm calling the police. Please. He grabs my wrist, his fingers digging in. You don't understand what you're dealing with. Marcus isn't who you think he is. Let go of me. I twist free, aware that people are watching now. I know exactly who Marcus is, and I know what you did. His face changes, a flash of something desperate breaking through. You think you know, but you don't. The gambling debts. Sir, step away from her. A security guard from the DA's building approaches, hand on his radio. My father backs up, hands raised. This isn't over, Rachel. You need to hear the whole story. That night, Detective Ramirez shares what they found. Your father's been in debt to Marcus's family for years. Started with gambling at their casino in Nevada, then private games. He owes them over $200,000. So selling me was his way of paying them back? The words taste bitter. Partly, but there's more. He slides a photo across the table. This is from Marcus's second wife's autopsy. See these marks? They match a custom-made letter opener Marcus keeps in his desk. The one he claimed was a family heirloom. The murder weapon? My hands start shaking. We think so, and we believe he still has it. I'm about to respond when my phone chimes with an alert from my security system. Someone's inside my apartment. The footage shows my father letting Marcus in through the back door, pointing out where the cameras are. We need to go, now. Detective Ramirez is already on his radio, calling for backup. By the time we arrive, they're gone. My apartment has been methodically searched, drawers emptied, mattress slashed. On my bathroom mirror, written in what looks like lipstick, "No one will believe you." The next day, Pastor Michael calls an emergency meeting with the church elders. I'm surprised when he asks me to attend. We've reviewed all the evidence, he tells the somber group of men and women who've known me since childhood, and we've spoken with Vanessa Linden and others who corroborate Rachel's claims. My father isn't present, but I can feel his influence in the room, the doubt in some eyes, the hesitation. The church church has been complicit through our silence, Pastor Michael continues. We ignored warnings about Marcus. We accepted his generous donations without questioning the source of his wealth or the circumstances of his wives' deaths. One elder, Mrs. Winters, speaks up. Richard has been our treasurer for 15 years. Are we certain he knowingly put his daughter in danger? Yes, I say quietly, pulling out my phone. Because his cousin told me everything. I play the recording from yesterday. Angela Winters, Marcus's cousin, speaking to Detective Ramirez after being brought in for questioning. Richard knew exactly what happened to both wives. Marcus bragged about it, said Richard could pay his debt by delivering a third wife who wouldn't ask questions. Someone raised to be obedient. The elders sit in stunned silence as the recording continues, detailing how my father had calculated the timing, waiting until I was financially vulnerable after losing my job last year before making the introduction to Marcus. That evening, Detective Ramirez outlines his plan. We need to draw Marcus out, get him to reveal something concrete about the previous murders. You want to use me as bait. It's not a question. Under controlled conditions, we'll have officers positioned throughout the area. You'll be wearing a wire. And my father? We believe he'll try to warn Marcus. When he does, we'll have him on conspiracy charges. The trap is set for the following night. I sit alone at a restaurant Marcus frequents, my heart pounding so hard I'm certain the microphone taped to my chest will pick it up. Detective Ramirez and his team are scattered throughout the restaurant and surrounding buildings. My father arrives first, sliding into the seat across from me. Rachel, you need to leave. Now. His voice is urgent, his eyes darting around the restaurant. Why? Are you worried about what might happen to me? I keep my voice steady, remembering the script. You don't understand what you've done, the people you've angered. You mean Marcus? The man you sold me to? His face twists. I didn't sell you. I was trying to protect you. By arranging my marriage to a man who murdered his previous wives, it wasn't supposed to be like that. He leans forward, lowering his voice. The debts were too big. They were going to kill me. Marcus offered a solution. Marry you, get the insurance, stage an accident in a year or two. Nobody would get hurt. I feel sick. Nobody except me. It would have looked like an accident. Clean. Quick. His eyes are pleading now. You would never have known. It was mercy, Rachel. I don't have time to process the horror of his words because Marcus appears at our table, smiling that cold smile that never reaches his eyes. Family reunion. He slides into the chair beside my father. How touching. Marcus, she knows everything. My father hisses. We need to leave, does she? Marcus looks at me with clinical interest. I doubt that very much. I know about Meredith and Tanya, I say, forcing myself to meet his gaze. I know about the letter opener. Something flickers in his eyes. Surprise, then calculation. He reaches into his jacket pocket and pulls out a slender silver object, placing it on the table between us. This letter opener. He runs his finger along its edge. Unique design. My grandfather had it made in Vienna. The police never found it, you know. They searched everywhere after Tanya's accident. Because it wasn't an accident, I say, my heart racing. You stabbed her first, then staged the car crash. He smiles, a teacher pleased with a student's answer. Meredith was different. Stairs are so dangerous in old houses. A little push, and gravity does the rest. My father looks physically ill. Marcus, stop talking. Why? Your daughter wanted to know everything. Marcus leans toward me, his voice intimate. Your father negotiated quite a price for you, Rachel. Not just debt forgiveness. He wanted cash too. $20,000. Said it was for your wedding dress. The restaurant lights suddenly brighten, and Detective Ramirez's voice cuts through the moment. Marcus Johnson, Richard Coleman, you're both under arrest. Officers converge from all directions as Marcus lunges across the table, the letter opener aimed at my throat. Two officers tackle him before he reaches me, the weapon clattering to the floor. My father doesn't resist as they handcuff him, his eyes fixed on mine. Rachel, please. You have to understand. I was desperate. I watch as they lead them both away, Marcus still smiling that empty smile. My father's shoulders slumped in defeat. Detective Ramirez approaches with the letter opener, now sealed in an evidence bag. We got him. The confession, the weapon, everything. And my father? His recorded admission about the arrangement plus Angela's testimony? He's going away for a long time too. I nod, numb with exhaustion and relief. It's over. But as I gather my things to leave, I know the real work of rebuilding my life is just beginning. The morning of the trial, I wake up in a cold sweat, Marcus's voice echoing in my dreams. I've been staying at a hotel chosen by Detective Ramirez since my apartment still feels contaminated by Marcus's presence. The letter opener, now sealed as evidence, haunts my thoughts. You ready for this? Detective Ramirez asks, meeting me in the lobby. His eyes have the weary look of someone who hasn't slept much. As ready as I'll ever be, I reply, smoothing down my navy blue blazer. The DA suggested I dress conservatively, professional, but not flashy. How's the security? Quote, tight. Metal detectors, extra officers. Marcus has resources, but he's not getting anywhere near you. The courthouse steps are crowded with reporters. I keep my head down as Detective Ramirez guides me through the throng, ignoring questions shouted in our direction. Miss Coleman, how does it feel knowing your father sold you to a serial killer? Rachel, did you suspect Marcus Johnson before finding the text messages? Inside, the courtroom is already filling with spectators. My father sits at one table with his lawyer, shoulders slumped in his ill-fitting suit. He looks older, diminished. When he sees me, he straightens, his eyes pleading. I look away. At the other table, Marcus sits perfectly still, his expensive suit making him look like a respectable businessman rather than a predator. His eyes follow me as I walk to my seat, and the corner of his mouth lifts in that cold smile that never reaches his eyes. District Attorney Hayes nods to me as I take my place. The judge granted our motion to include evidence from both previous cases, she whispers. Marcus's lawyer fought hard against it, but the similarities were too compelling to ignore. The trial begins with opening statements. The prosecutor methodically outlines the case, the text messages, the tracking device, the financial records showing my father's gambling debts and the payments from Marcus, the letter opener matching wounds on Tanya's body, the recorded confessions. Marcus's lawyer paints him as a successful businessman being framed by a mentally unstable unstable woman and her corrupt police allies. My father's attorney takes a different approach, describing him as a gambling addict whose judgment was impaired by his addiction. Richard Coleman was not in his right mind, his lawyer argues. His addiction made him vulnerable to manipulation by Marcus Johnson. He needs treatment, not imprisonment. When it's my turn to testify, I feel Marcus's eyes on me like a physical weight. I focus on DA Hayes as I recount finding the text message on my father's phone, the woman in the car, the tracking device, everything that happened that morning and in the weeks that followed. And what did your father say when you confronted him about his arrangement with the defendant? Hayes asks. I swallow hard. He said Marcus offered a solution to his gambling debts, that Marcus would marry me, take out insurance, and stage an accident in a year or two. My voice cracks. He said it would be clean and quick, that I would never have known. He called it mercy. The courtroom is silent, except for someone sobbing softly in the back. I don't look. During cross-examination, Marcus's lawyer tries to paint me as unstable, bringing up the emails my father had shown from Dr. Westbrook at Pinewood Psychiatric, but the prosecution has already established those were fabricated. The doctor, non-existent. My father's lawyer is gentler but no less manipulative, trying to establish that my father was acting under duress, that he never truly intended for me to be harmed. Did your father ever explicitly say he wanted you to die? He asks. No, I admit. He just arranged for it to happen. Day after day, the evidence mounts. Vanessa Linden testifies about her sister Meredith's journal and the pattern of escalating abuse before her death. Forensic experts link the letter opener to wounds on Tanya's body. Financial records show the trail of money from Marcus to my father. The most damning testimony comes from Angela Winters, Marcus's cousin. She sits nervously at the stand, avoiding Marcus's gaze. Marcus told Richard exactly what happened to both wives, she testifies. He bragged about it, said Richard could pay his debt by delivering a third wife who wouldn't ask questions. And how did Richard Coleman respond to this proposal? DA Hayes asks. Angela's voice is barely audible. He asked how much money he would get on top of the debt forgiveness. My father stares at the table, not looking up. Throughout the trial, a group from my church sits in the courtroom every day, wearing small purple ribbons, the color of domestic violence awareness. Pastor Michael organized a support group for me and other women from the congregation who came forward with their own stories of abuse after my case made the news. You're giving others courage, he tells me during a recess. Your story is helping people find their voice. After 3 grueling weeks, the jury deliberates for just 6 hours before returning with a verdict. On the charge of first-degree murder in the death of Meredith Johnson, we find the defendant Marcus Johnson guilty. On the charge of first-degree murder in the death of Tanya Johnson, we find the defendant Marcus Johnson guilty. On the charge of attempted murder of Rachel Coleman, we find the defendant Marcus Johnson guilty. Marcus's face remains impassive, that same cold calculation behind his eyes. On the charge of conspiracy to commit murder, we find the defendant Richard Coleman guilty. On the charge of accessory to attempted murder, we find the defendant Richard Coleman guilty. My father crumples, his head in his hands. At the sentencing hearing a month later, the courtroom is packed. Families of both Meredith and Tanya sit in the front row. I've gotten to know them over the past weeks, Vanessa with her quiet strength, Tanya's parents with their grief still raw after 5 years. The judge, a stern woman with silver hair, addresses Marcus first. Mr. Johnson, you have systematically preyed upon women, using marriage as a cover for your predatory behavior. You have shown no remorse, no acknowledgement of the lives you've destroyed. She pauses. I sentence you to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. She turns to my father. Mr. Coleman, your betrayal of your daughter is unconscionable. That you would sell her life to pay a gambling debt shows a moral bankruptcy that this court finds abhorrent. Another pause. I sentence you to 25 years imprisonment. Outside the courthouse, I stand with Vanessa and Tanya's parents for a brief statement to the press. Today doesn't bring back those we've lost, I say, but it ensures no other woman will fall victim to Marcus Johnson. 2 months after the trial, I receive a letter from prison. My father's handwriting, once confident and bold, now looks shaky. Rachel, I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. What I did was unforgivable. The gambling consumed me until I couldn't see clearly anymore. Marcus seemed like a solution, not a monster. I told myself you would never know, that it would be painless. I lied to myself that I was protecting you somehow. I know now how wrong I was. I'm sorry. Your father. I visit him once, a month later. The prison visiting room is stark, institutional. My father looks old, broken. We sit across from each other, the table between us like a chasm. I read your letter, I say finally. I meant every word, he replies, his voice hoarse. I know you did. I take a deep breath. I'm not here to forgive you. I don't know if I ever can. I'm here to tell you I'm starting a foundation for women like Meredith and Tanya, for girls being forced into marriages they don't want. Your actions destroyed lives, but they also exposed something that needs to change. He nods, tears in his eyes. You always were stronger than me. That's the last time I'll visit, I tell him as I stand to leave. Goodbye, Dad. The Rachel Coleman Foundation for Marriage Freedom launches 6 months later with funding from the book and film rights to my story. We provide legal aid to women trapped in forced or abusive marriages, education about predatory relationships, and advocacy for stronger laws against domestic violence. A year after the trial, I'm invited to testify before Congress about predatory marriage legislation. As I stand at the podium, I see faces of women I've met through the foundation survivors like me, family members of those who didn't survive. My father sold me to a man who had murdered 2 wives, I begin, but my story is not unique. Across this country, women and girls are being coerced, manipulated, and forced into marriages that put their lives at risk. Today, I ask you to pass legislation that protects them, that recognizes these arrangements for what they are: human trafficking disguised as tradition. The chambers are silent when I finish. Then, one by one, people begin to stand. The applause washes over me like a wave, and for the first time since I slammed that door in my father's face, I feel truly free.